You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. My name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. The interview subject that I have coming up for you, I honestly never thought I'd be able to say this, but it is Jeff Becerra from the outfit Possessed. The reason for the conversation is to promote Possessed' brand new album. It is called Revelations of Oblivion, and it will be out May 10, certainly in Australia. May 10, 2019, that is, if you're listening to it in the distant future. Yeah, I honestly, it's one of those moments that you got to pinch yourself and think, okay, so this is the guy who helped create death metal through his time in Possessed when they released those fabulous albums from back in the day that are still highly influential. So you got Seven Churches in 1985, Beyond the Gates in 1986, and there was also an EP released in 87 called The Eyes of Horror. So I hope I don't fan out too much. I hope it doesn't sound like I'm fanning out too much in this conversation here. But, back in the day, before the internet became the all-consuming behemoth that it is, we here in Australia, we only heard about things in dribs and drabs and through import fanzines, and particularly Metal Maniacs magazine. Those older listeners will be able to recall that was the glossy paged, if you like, what would you call it? It was a magazine, but it was a bit more than that. It was a centre of culture for many of us because it was the only thing out there that was actually promoting extreme music. And I remember a poster, an A4 size poster that came in one of their episodes or editions, I should say. I think it was about 97 or 98, but it actually had a picture of the full band Possessed, complete with Jeff, Mike Sauce, Jeff Terraro, and of course Larry Lalonde. Larry Lalonde, who I did interview for the podcast series. So if you want to check out that interview, I do ask some questions of the great Larry Lalonde about his time in Possessed, and he seemed genuinely surprised that people held him in such reverence and the band in such reverence. And I do think he was being quite genuine, as well as you'll hear me explain to Jeff through the conversation. So I've held you up long enough. Let's have a listen to what Jeff has to say. Here we go.
Hello.
Hello, brother. How are you?
I wanted to get early because it looks like Ant's only scheduled us a half an hour.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he scheduled us a half an hour. Yeah, so you've got some very keen Australian media contingent ready to talk to you. Let me tell you, there's a lot of clamouring for spots to have a chat to the great Jeff Becerra.
Well, yeah, it's Becerra.
Becerra. Okay, there you go.
It's actually Becerra, but I say Becerra, so I'm not as Mexican as the rest of my band. So
there you go.
But I figured yesterday we ran into problems because 30 minutes is so fast. I don't know why she's scheduling so fast.
Look, it's been an issue. I've been doing this a couple of years now, and typically, mate, I tell you, we only get 15 minutes, and it goes by. You've gone through sort of one or two questions, and particularly like in a situation like this where I'm an old fan of the band and I've been listening to the band for a long time. Yeah, what can I say, man? It's a thrill. It's a thrill either way, though. It's a thrill either way, particularly for us indie journo types.
How about this? If we run out of time, my last interview is with the Rock Pit. It is from it ends at 3. So if we run out of time, you can always call back at 3.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I'd really appreciate that. Yeah, I had a chat to, Mike Corabi. He used to be the, John Corabi, sorry. He used to be the singer in Motley Crue and also Scream. We did the same thing not too long ago, actually, about 2 weeks ago, actually. And we got a hell of a lot of great content down that Blabbermouth didn't even think was all of that relevant, unfortunately. But that's probably a good thing in a lot of ways, since they're trying to pick up on some of the more controversial elements of conversation. But mate, no, that's really kind of you to do that.
Blabbermouth has a long history of shit about me, so.
Mate, I don't know how they haven't been sued, because there's been a lot of shit printed on there through the years.
It comes with the territory, Possessed has always been a very controversial band. And, it just comes with the territory, so.
It does indeed. It does indeed, yeah. I mean, it's with you, man, it's really hard to know where to start. You're one of a handful of artists. I've done over 400 interviews at this point. You are one of a handful of artists whose poster I had on my wall as a kid growing up, and I had a chat to Larry Lalonde about 12 months ago before Primus were coming down, because I'm a bass player, so I'm a massive Primus fan, and it was really through Larry's association in Primus that I got into you guys. And
Yeah.
seven churches.
How's Larry doing?
He's good, man. Yeah, yeah. The interesting thing about talking to him, though, man, was that he wasn't. I genuinely believe. I believe that he's very genuine in this. Here, he doesn't understand the impact that he has had as a guitarist and the impact that Possessed have had as a band on not just heavy metal but all of music, i.e., the creation of a genre through death metal, and it was.
He's a really humble guy.
Yeah, he was. That's what he struck me as, and it was a bit like having the conversation with you. It's really, I mean, what can I say? I'm doing an interview, but at the same time, I'm talking to somebody whose music I've been following for the better part of 30 years.
Well, I appreciate your support, and
Yeah.
it means the world to me. You know?
No, thanks, mate. Yeah, it's. I remember back in the genesis of the internet, searching the internet for interviews with you, yourself and Larry, and of course you could never find any copy out there about Larry's association with the Possessed, even though I knew that he was in the band. And there was only one or two interviews with you back in the day that I could find. I remember the old GeoCities days in the mid-90s, and
Yeah.
I used to trawl it because, of course, you couldn't find any in print media back then. You just weren't being interviewed. So I think you've correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a lawyer.
No, I was gonna be a lawyer, but I ended up working as a labor rep for Kaiser, which is a hospital, which is much like a lawyer, but you protect workers' rights and from labor law and labor the economics of things and civil rights and just basically making sure people are getting treated fairly whenever they go up against management. So I lost faith in the legal system and ended up just going to work as a labor rep and worked my way up to one of many vice presidents for the labor union.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, and that's where I read that back in the day. God, it must have been about now that'd be 22 or 23 years ago that I remember reading that in one of the very first metal web pages that they either interviewed you or they posted an interview with you. So
it must have been when I was about to go to law school, but then decided against it. So,
yeah. Do you have any? Do you? I wouldn't say regrets, but do you wish you had gone to law school now and done that?
No, I wanted to get the band back together. It was toward my marriage, and the whole end goal was to get Possessed back together. But in order to do that, I had to be in a happy place, a good place, a solid place. And in order to do that, I went to college and did the things that I felt that I needed to do, as a man, and to get my mind right and get ready because, you don't want to go out there all fucked up in the head. You want to go out there in a good space. So,
yeah, indeed. That's the
I'm in a very good space. In a really good space.
Hey, just to go back to Larry, you guys obviously haven't spoken in some time.
No, it's probably been 30 years or more.
Shit. Yeah. Yeah, look, he sounded like an awesome dude to your comments earlier, man. Yeah, so it'd be on this run of shows, man. I'm planning on releasing this as a podcast episode, if that's okay. So, man, if there's anybody from Primus's management or around Larry that ever hears this and wants to reach out to you, man, and if you two could connect and he could maybe join you guys on stage for a song or two, I can tell you, man, old fans like me would just be tickled pink.
Yeah, that would be crazy. I mean, right now we're really pushing the album, but once that's all over, yeah, Larry's always welcome. I don't know if you know our history, but me and Larry started a band when we were like, little kids. And so, we'd been in a band since we were little kids, all the way through Blizzard, all the way through Marauder, all the way through Blizzard, all the way through Zest, and then he moved on,
Yeah. See, he's a very good guitarist. See, I'm also a guitarist, and as a metal guitarist, I would probably say between Larry and Chuck Schuldiner are my two premier influences, if you like. I just loved the way Larry would solo on so many of the songs across, especially when he started getting lessons from Joe Satriani. You could really hear that.
Yeah, he really improved.
Yeah.
Have you heard guys now?
Sorry, what was that, mate?
Have you heard my current guys? Have you heard the new album?
Man, I have. Sorry, I will get to that now, actually, because it's Revelations of Oblivion. And, man, I got to tell you, and I hope this doesn't offend, man, but I was really surprised in a positive way. You know,
Yeah. Well, these are the best guitarists I've ever worked with by far. So,
mate, they are so good. And I'm, as I said, I've said a few times, man, I'm a musician, so I listen with headphones intently to the
yeah.
guitarist performance, man. And those guys, man, are fucking. They've got it right down, man. They are issuing a lesson in death metal
You know what
guitar
the crazy
performance.
part is? Is they did it in like one or two takes. They did their solos.
Holy shit! Yeah, well, man,
Yeah,
their
like
life is they're good at it.
it wasn't like they did it over and over and over. Like many times they would play it, it's on wax.
Yeah, well, yeah, it does have an immediacy that hints at that actually, but you never know until you talk to someone at the center of everything that that's the case. So, I mean, the drumming too, man. The drumming is just up. I mean, it's very different to Mike's drumming, but it is just bang
Sick.
on.
Yeah, I kept. That's the only guy I kept from Sadistic is Emilio because he was just too damn good to let go. You know.
Yeah, yeah, that was a characteristic. It was probably it's certainly not a criticism again, but it's as a musician, it was the only thing that I used to listen to some of the old Possessed records that I could hear Mike go slightly behind the beat and then speed up again, and it gave it. I understand that it gives it a character, but when you're playing music as ferocious as this, you love it to be bang on like you
Yeah,
Emilio
yeah.
doing what he's doing.
Mike was always. Well, he started out with single bass drum, and I had to threaten to kick him out to get him a second bass. And so it was always, like it was like something that he threw in there, and it was always kind of a little flubby. But
Hmm.
but I've always wanted to work with the solid on drummer, and I think it really helps the characteristics of music.
Hmm.
In fact, I found guys that were my brothers that were like a family. We literally died for each other, and
Wow.
it's something I've always wanted. And of course, I've always wanted to have people that can really, really, really play. So.
Yeah, well, you've got that. I think you've finally got the cast of musicians around you after so long. You know,
Yeah.
1987, The Eyes of Horror. That was the last time an official release was unleashed on the public. You know, so that's 32 years. 32 years ago, mate. I mean, there's a lot of most of the people that'll be listening to this podcast aren't 32. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I
been
know a lot of bands are retiring, and I'm just getting started.
yeah, mate. You sound youthful, man. Even talking to you now, you know, on the album, your vocal, it sounds eerily similar to what you sounded like 35 years ago. You know
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I mean, I tried to spruce it up a little bit. I didn't double my vocals. I made a concerted effort to really pronounce the words and put a little bit more range in there. And since I'm not playing bass on the albums, I wanted to concentrate and kind of make the vocals a little bit more worthy.
Hmm. Did it ever cross your mind to play bass on the recordings and use your current bass player for live shows?
It did, but because because we want it to sound the same, and because I am writing a lot of the music, but I want to move around on stage, and it's just too cumbersome with bass,
Hmm.
and it's easier for me to concentrate on writing and doing what I need to do with the bass player, and Robert sounds a lot like eerily like me, but and he's just perfect for the job. So I'm going to leave him where he's at.
Yeah, no, fair enough, man. Well, you're doing the right things because, look, of course, I'm on the Nuclear Blast promo list, so I've been listening to Revelations of Oblivion a lot. Okay, and I've listened to it, but my thing is to listen to it in a variety of applications. Of course, I'm going to have an opportunity to review it probably for the Metal Obsession web scene fairly soon. But I like to listen to it on those bloody awful speakers that are in the MacBook Air that I've got because they just remove the bass out of everything.
I listen to it through my fucking laptop speakers.
Yeah, that's the same for me, and it even sounds good through there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you know if it sounds good through there, it's a really well put together album. It's very polished.
17 mixes later. Yeah.
17. Yeah, well,
Yeah, I was fucking. The first time I heard it, I was like, "Oh shit!" I was really unhappy, and then luckily, Peter Tactor, he got so fed up with me at one point. I was either going to fire him or he was going to quit. And then we did it one more mix, and we said, "Okay, we can live with this." So.
yeah. Well, let me tell you, mate, I've had a conversation with Pete as well, and I rate him as a human being and as a producer, man.
It's
And if you're
amazing.
if you're working with Pete, man, you're in very, very safe hands. So that was such a good decision to work with him.
Yes, and he was able to. not do his textbook mixes, but to do the Possessed mix, which was, he came out of retirement for this, so.
Yeah, I didn't know that. There you go. Yeah, wow, I really admire his production. I've got to say, what he did with Celtic Frost on Monotheus. Do you remember that album?
Sick.
Yeah.
Fucking sick. Yeah, that was one of the big sells. Because I'd been out of the scene so long. Like I just literally Googled who are the top best 10 death metal producers, and I got a list of 10 of repeats. It just kept repeating over and over on all the sites, and PT's was on each of them. And so I sent that list of 10 to Gerardo Martinez from Nuclear Blast. He said, we work with 8 of these. So I took it back to the band, and everybody said Peter, including myself. And we asked Peter, and literally the same day he said yes. And so we got really lucky,
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's fantastic, man. That's fantastic because it's, I have listened to some of the criticisms of his production, and I haven't heard any of that come through in your recording. So, to your point, it's not like an album. I didn't actually know prior to you mentioning it that Pete had produced it. Okay.
Yeah, there's always going to be fucking haters. It's the nature of Possessed. Some people they don't understand that the origin death metal is meant to be a wide variety of music and melody and artsmanship and crafts. We didn't want to get pigeonholed, and we tried to change each album to be different so that death metal wasn't just one thing. And then whenever I disappeared, it started becoming one thing. And so I'm back, and I'm trying to broaden the horizons of what is death metal. I know that sounds arrogant, but I just don't want to see it become a race to the bottom to where it burns itself out,
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of heavy metal can get like that. It becomes a very strong competition, and it can suck the life out of some of the soul and the spirit of some of the music as well. But
people just try to get heavier and heavier and heavier till they're just talking about cross fucking nuns with blast beats and fucking cookie cutter fucking bullshit, and that's not what my vision of death metal is. My vision of death metal is all of that and more. No rules.
No rules, indeed. Yeah, mate. I tell you what, no rules. And I'll tell you something. I've mentioned this a few times to people. The great Jello Biafra, many years ago, I remember reading a quote from him. He said that there are only 2 sorts of music that you'll hear in every country that you go to, and that certainly was part of his experience and has been part of mine: jazz and death metal. Now, I've spent a lot of time in the Philippines, and there are some fantastic death metal bands in the Philippines. All through South America, you've got death metal bands. And I tell you something, in Iran, and I believe in Saudi Arabia, there are death metal bands.
So definitely. I have friends in...
But you know what I'm saying? You can't say that about any other genre, as far as I'm concerned, except for death metal and jazz, whichever country you go to. Mate, I was reading one of the local bands here, Lethal Vendetta, were on the front page, or their name was on the front page of a metal publication from Botswana. And they're a band that veer on death metal. So this genre that you've started, man, it's a global phenomenon, and it's a grassroots phenomenon.
I think it's something that needs to be said. I think it's something that we all have inside of us, and it feels good to get out,
Do you feel like you represent the underdog, especially with you talk about some of that work that you're doing there for the unions and the like? But the death metal to me, probably because of my vintage, man, I always looked at it as the underdog's music. You know what I mean? It was ferocious. We're in a corner and we're kicking out against the prick, so to speak. But do you feel as though there's the strong spirit of the underdog through death metal?
Well, Possessed in particular is an underdog because 99.999% of the world has no fucking clue that Possessed even exists. We're not like one of those bands that sells millions of records. We're not rich. We're always been the underdog. And even today, magazines are saying Possessed isn't death metal, the thrash. And it's felt like a revolution from the start because the media has been really hesitant to acknowledge Possessed as first the creators of death metal, which we very much were. And they're saying, we're not playing death metal. And it's just the same bullshit, they don't understand. They don't want to understand. They and it's crazy. It's crazy because, historically we created death metal. We were very much the first. We did that intentionally. And we've always been kind of denied that. And and but those that were there, there's people that were there that know the truth.
Hmm.
What we're doing certainly is death metal because, as death metal is what we're making it.
Look, I do read the Blabbermouth forums, and I do read fan comments on YouTube and on Facebook, Twitter, all of the usual social media platforms, and I think to your point, you understand the theory of the myth of the legend or the myth of the lie. So someone says something back in the late 80s or the early 90s, and then that's used as proof of someone's view or version of the truth in 2019. You know what I'm saying? So, man, I've seen everything from Cam Lee invented death metal to Chuck Schuldine is a piece of shit, or like all sorts of comments about the great forefathers of this genre. Yourself.
Me and Chuck were good friends.
Yeah, I've been listening to your watching your YouTube videos.
Chuck actually asked my permission to call Death a death metal band.
There you go. Yeah, so that settles that argument.
Well, no, he actually moved down to mentor under me and the guys to the Possessed Fan Club house, both in Antioch, California, then later in Florida. So Chuck was one of the first people. A lot of people were catching on to what we were doing back in the day, in the early 80s, and Chuck was one of the first people. And, I have no doubt that after I got shot, that there was a big possibility that death metal could have died if it wasn't for Chuck carrying the torch,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's certainly, I hope you don't mind me saying this, he's certainly the guy that popularised it because, Possessed are an underground phenomenon, but with Chuck through the early 90s, they're appearing on Beavis and Butthead. And I had a good chat to Ralph Santola. Did you ever meet Ralph, or are you aware of Ralph?
Who is Ralph?
Ralph was his guitarist, Chuck's guitarist for many years, but he was basically the go-to in the 2000s for many death metal bands. He recorded some extraordinary albums with Deicide,
nice.
where he was the lead guitarist, and the Hoffman brothers are very good, nasty death thrash proponents, right? But Ralph is just a neoclassical god.
Nice.
And he just took their music into another dimension. And of course, you got fans out there that go, it's too melodic, bullshit, whatever. But man, it's brutal as hell. But you've got these wonderful sweep arpeggio, but in a really nice classical sense, solos across the material, man. But
I love the musicality of death metal, and I think that I don't believe in the subgenres of death metal because my vision is to have death metal is a giant organism that can be anything and everything, but of course there are the basic, which is the fast drums and the heavy vocals. And there are a few rules, but, even those can be broken. I think it's more of an attitude and a spirit. And the fact that you're announcing yourself as a death metal band has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah, so, mate, with this album, Revelations of Oblivion, are you no doubt you've had heaps of offers to go on tours, so and to promote the album by touring, mate. So, have you? Are you guys in a position? I assume everybody's got jobs and all the rest of it. I don't know how hard it is, man, to play heavy metal at the end of the day. It's not easy, mate. You got to put food on the table. But are you guys in a position where you could take some months off and go on tour?
Oh yeah, we tour all the time. Only two of us have real jobs. I don't have a real job. Robert doesn't have a real job. Claudius doesn't have a real job, but Dan and Emilio work. Possessed is what I'm doing full time. And yeah, we tour. We've been touring for the last 12, 13 years since late 2006, 2007.
Cool. Yeah. I've noticed that actually. I have seen there's a few live albums out there. Hopefully they've got your blessing. I was looking on Wikipedia and I had no idea that there was the amount of compilations that had been released by, I don't know who it is, man, but there's about 3 or 4 or 5 live releases and greatest hits. There's even a Possessed greatest hits out there. Have you seen that?
Yeah, there is.
Yeah,
Victims,
man. Yeah, I'd love for the, I mean, hopefully it's true, man, and you do have hits in some alternative dimensions somewhere else and are reaping the benefits of it. But, I think they did the same thing with Death as well back in the early 90s. It's always interesting to find a death metal band with a greatest hits.
Yeah, I know. There's a tribute album. And
yeah, I have. I've. And who was it? many years ago, Cannibal Corpse did a really good version of The Exorcist. Did you ever hear that?
Yeah, of course, great. Great band.
Yeah, yeah. Well, mate, you're right.
I've never actually met those guys, which is weird because I've met everybody else just about, but
Yeah, they're one band too who I haven't had an opportunity to talk to either. And being a bassist, Alex Webster's, so you know what it's like with Alex Webster. My God, he's a monster.
yeah.
You know. So, mate, what happens from here? Okay, so you release this album. Is this a bit like what happened when Bruce rejoined Maiden with Brave New World, man? Is there going to be a series of albums after this one, or is at least that the intent?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I have a 3 album contract and some bonus tracks with Nuclear Blast, but from what they're telling me is I can make as many albums as I want with them. Of course, you never know what happens after negotiations and everything. But yes, I'm definitely going to make at least 3 full-length albums, and I fully plan on creating music until I either die or can no longer do it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have a lot of good years left in me. So
Mate, from the sounds of things here, you're just getting started. It sounds
yeah,
like
I always feel like I'm just getting started. I feel like we were cut off in our prime when the guys quit on me. They wanted to live normal lives, and Larry wanted to go on to Blind Illusion and Primus. And so I was going to reform them, but then, of course, I got shot a couple of times. Then it took me 17 and a half years to get my head back on straight and to feel confident and good about myself. And of course, I've got, thousands of letters and emails and people asking me to come back. And I think that possesses, the vision and the dream of getting Possessed back together is really what made me get through it. And, the fans and the supporters. And I think I really owe them my life in a lot of ways. And it's just really, really good to be back,
Hmm. Hmm. Were there periods of time when you say tuned out of the metal scene, and so was it nice to sort of tune back in and see the reverence for Possessed from some fans like myself?
Oh, of course. I mean, I was busy in college and with marriage and my kids, and of course I still listen to metal all the time, but I'm not one of those like encyclopedias of metal like a lot of the guys in my band. I bet you like I still listen to a lot of old stuff. I listen to stuff that I come in contact with through tours and watching other bands play, and people send me their demos and stuff. But I try not to be too like I'm always afraid that I'll hear something and it'll stick in my head, and then I accidentally write it later. And so I love all metal bands, of course. I'm just not one of those walking encyclopedias of metal, but I do listen to a hell of a lot of metal. So.
Yeah. Hey, do you mind if I ask you a question? You mentioned a couple of times, but when you got shot, are you okay if I ask you a question about that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Do you... God, I hope this doesn't sound too obtuse, but are you a fatalist about these sorts of things?
What do you mean a fatalist?
You mean, I'm Catholic, you see, so I tend to think that there's some divine providence in every act. I don't know how else to describe it, but and I appreciate you've been the one that's gone through the experience, okay, but does everything happen for a reason?
I think that, yeah, of course everything happens for a reason. Those guys were addicted to drugs. They needed drug money. I flashed 100 whenever I was buying a pack of cigarettes, and I got robbed,
Yeah.
Live and learn.
Yeah.
I don't expect life to be fair, because life is very unfair, but you just got to roll with the punches,
Yeah, you do, man. It was a shock to hear that it happened to you, mate. So I know it's very belated, man, but I'm sincerely sorry that it happened to you, and it's an experience that you had to endure.
Oh yeah, I've been in a chair longer than I was walking, so
Yeah.
I'm normal now.
Yeah. It's like
I have a cold, so my voice is a little raspy.
No, you're right, mate. Yeah. I'm in my 40s, as I've alluded to a few times, but I'm back at uni full time. Okay, so I'm having a career change. I'm going to be becoming a journalist. So I was an account executive for a telecommunications firm beforehand, but I just got burnt out. And
nice.
And one of the subjects that I'm doing is screenwriting.
Well, not nice how you got burned out, but nice that you had the wherewithal to take away the net and tightrope it through.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, one of the subjects that I've just finished, actually, a 2-semester course, was screenwriting, and one of the movies that we watched was Murder Ball. Now, if you've seen that film, it's about the wheelchair rugby players.
Oh yeah. I knew a bunch of those guys.
Yeah, man, they're ferocious.
Yeah,
They just have no fear. Those guys. That
yeah. I
is
went to one of their games one time and met a bunch of them.
sweet, sweet. Yeah, yeah. Man, I think we're up, aren't we? Because you got one coming through in a minute's time or so. So what can I say, man? If you want to catch up later on, man, I'm all for that. But if I understand these things, mate. They can be very draining. These phonogrinds, I
Yeah,
call them.
yeah. Well, like I say, my last one is at. Let me see. I guess I don't know if we go either 3 or 4 my time. So if you want to call back, call back.
4 o'clock, yeah, okay. So that would be, I think it's about 9 o'clock my time. I've got to drop my kids off to school, you see, so or to daycare, I should say. And mate, when I get back, I'll ping you. I'll send you a message, man. And if you're available, it'd be cool to have a bit more of a chat.
Awesome, my brother, man. I felt like we didn't get much done. Uh,
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I'm an old fan, so I want to know all about you and share that with people if that's okay. So, man, we'll talk a lot more about the music when we next catch
Dude,
up.
I just got home from shooting our first music video, dude. It's gonna be fucking treat.
Awesome, man. It's good to hear, man. It's good to hear your voice. It's good to hear you back, man. And heavy
Yeah,
metal.
life is good. These are the best days of my life, man.
Yeah. Cool, brother. All right, I'll let you get to that next one, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you, sir.
No worries, mate. Okay, catch you.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.
You have been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and that conversation, of course, featured Jeff Becerra from the outfit Possessed. I really hope to reconnect with Jeff sometime in the near future because I do feel like the conversation has the potential to go on as long as the chats that I had to the guys in Venom and also the great Stuart Anstis from Cradle of Filth. An episode that I get more correspondence about than any other, it must be said. There's a lot of die-hard heavy metal fans out there who have a real appreciation for the forefathers, if you like, or those that have contributed to heavy metal's legacy in a very meaningful way. So good on Jeff there. As I said, really hope to connect with him in the near future. Go over and check out my Facebook page. I'm easily found, Scars and Guitars. Same thing for my website, scarsandguitars.net, I think it is. I also do some copy for the A-List Online. When I say I do some copy, it is my website. So virtually everything you see on there has been authored by me. So thank you so much for listening.